Antony, thanks a lot for joining.
Hey Pete, yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me.
So we're going to talk a lot today about ag tech and how that can. You're our ag tech guy, so I thought it might be useful to first of all talk about agriculture and how agriculture contributes itself to global warming. Because I think for a lot of people coming into this space, right, so they've heard Greta, they've heard David Attenborough, and so they've gone on board Drawdown and they've started to read about what contributes to global warming. It's maybe quite counterintuitive to hear that even crops and things like that contribute to the amount of carbon that's in the atmosphere. Perhaps you could start by talking us through that.
I think you're exactly right. I think naturally, when you think agriculture, we know agriculture, isn't it? It contributes at least to 20% of kind of global emissions. And you naturally think it's the cow. Blame the cow. Blame the cow. But as I say, it's not the cow. It's the how. But I've been on a personal journey of exploring this and just seeing firsthand. I was in the financial markets, and then I went into fell hard into ag tech. Didn't mean to get into it, and I've just become obsessed with it. But I saw that what was going on was certainly it's been going on right now is farmers are being paid to grow cheaper and cheaper food each year. It's like feed the world, grow cheaper and cheaper food, and that. Sadly, that incentive is now creating is generating some negatives. Well, it has been generating negatives. Like we're trading off killing ecosystem services. What I mean by that, we're killing biodiversity in our soils. We're killing, just to ensure that we get that piece of food off. We're basically borrowing from the future, if you want to kind of look at that. So, what's been going on is that we've been applying these chemical inputs from fertilizers to fungicides and biocides. The word "sides" means kill, right? So we've been working with a natural system and just saying, no, you're not. It doesn't work like that. We're just going to kill this bit off. And the soil is alive. Our soils, which we grow our food, is where all life starts. And we've been applying these things, which is trying to supposedly kill bits around it or kill it. So our soils, as we know, it's quite evident that our soils are one of the greatest carbon captures. It is the basic carbon capture machine that we have, actually, and we've just been working against it. And so, what we've been doing essentially is killing the machine that is holding all our carbon. There's something like 2,500 petrograms of carbon in the soil. That is 3 times as much as what's in the atmosphere, right? We talk about we're worried about what's in the atmosphere now is warming up. The soil holds 3 times as much as that, and so we've been kind of destroying that thing that's kind of holding it. And that's not just, the livestock industry. Yes, it's land change, but it's even just our normal row crops. It's the fruits that we eat, and every single part of the food chain has been slowly, emitting emissions above ground, but then killing and destroying the machine which is holding carbon in as well, which is soil, and that generates lots of benefits. So that was just, for me, it was just so compelling that the one thing that can actually sequester carbon, we're actually working against it and moving out of it. We're moving indoors. We're moving indoors because of climate change, but agriculture is a contributor to climate change.
That's a new thought for me, that the fact that soil is alive, that's only recently that I've kind of discovered that. And I think we tend to behave as though soil is kind of just like sand. It's a substrate to hold plants up, to hold them upright. And if you want to feed plants, you have to pour fertilizer around the base. But the fact that, like Mark Watney in The Martian, that's what, I don't know if you've seen The Martian. I've seen it many times. So he's on Mars, right?
Which one?
Which film? The Martian.
Which is there new Martian, the one with
Matt Damon. So Matt Damon is stranded. He's stranded on Mars. He's got to try and grow potatoes. So he's trying to figure out, how do I grow this in the regolith of Mars, which is really like sand, to hold plants upright. So he's got to introduce life into it. And long story short, I don't want to spoil the whole movie for you, but he introduces his own fecal matter in it, and so the microbes that are in his own poop, he feeds those. But it's how did we get to this point where we kind of see the soil as though it's like a dead sand substrate, and we have to pour chemicals into it? How did we move away from this idea that the soil is alive?
Well, I think we short-termism as usual. Human beings taking a short-termist approach. It was like someone said, "Hey, pour this fertilizer, nitrogen, right? So we're covered in nitrogen, right? 78% in the atmosphere is nitrogen. And we turned it to a different form, and we threw it on our crops. And I mean, the argument is after the World War II, this is where it all really accelerated. We had a lot of excess supply of nitrogen, which was obviously utilized for bombs, right? Excess supply, and it was repurposed to feed the world. In other words, put it onto food and crops, and look what happens. Of course, it does. Yes, it does. It eats carbon, right? That's what it does. It burns carbon. It accelerates the process and burns carbon, and we just lobby on excessive amounts of it onto the environment, and so you're effectively eating the carbon to create biomass. It does that. We all know that's what it does. So we thought, oh, that worked. We can feed the world. And lob it on. And we've just been basically slowly making ourselves less and less resilient. In other words, there's less money in the bank. It's like being drained down. And the soils used to have so much carbon in them, and we're just eating it. And it's become lifeless. And it's like, well, if it's lifeless, what do I need to do? Add more inputs. So it's like we killed it with the herbicides, fungicides, and biocides, killed its ability to add value. It's like, well, don't worry, you can lob on this fertilizer as well, and all these other inputs which should be there, which are there. So yeah, we've just killed all the nice nutrients that are there in the soil. So we've gone, actually, but if I keep applying these inputs on, I can keep going. And that's what you see inside the greenhouse, right? And as you say, we put it in this rock wool substrate, but then we add in the nutrients to give it, because plants just don't create nutrients in them. That you and I bite a tomato and we get all these extra vitamins and antioxidants. They don't just come out of thin air. It doesn't pull it out the air. It comes from the root system. And so we have to, in those indoor environments, we have to put energy into that. You have to give it the liquid, if you want to say it like that, to pull nutrients into the plants. So think about the process of creating those nutrients, the energy intensity to develop these chemical inputs. So it just feels like a very never-ending energy loop of expenditure. So yeah, vertical farming and co. These places they have an application. Don't get me wrong, in parts of the world because of where we're at, but I don't see they're part of this something like this net zero solution. If anything, I'm very worried about their net carbon position. Even greenhouses, but we still need to feed ourselves. We have anarchy if we don't have if we can't feed ourselves. So they're solving a short-term problem. That's how I got to this point, Pete. Was I was digitizing indoor agriculture with a Dutch ag tech business called 30 megahertz, and I just was quite troubled by the fact that I was helping solve for the effect of climate change, of the issues that systematically exist in the food chain, the systematic problems. And I was like, I'm just like I was in the financial markets after the financial crisis. I'm solving for the effect again. So it just didn't stick with me. I was like, we should grow in the soil. And guess what? If you do grow in the soil in a certain way, it repairs itself. It naturally repairs itself. That's what nature does. It will always come back, and it wants to work like that. We just work against it.
Okay, so to try and recap what it is that we've said so far, the soil is alive, and if you go back, I can't remember when the agricultural revolution started because I wasn't there, but if you go back 10,000 years before the agricultural revolution, I hope that's far back enough. Then people would have planted seeds, and those seeds would have grown in the soil, and they would have been nourished by this ecosystem, this biome of microbes in the soil, which are kind of self-sustaining. They produce a wide variety of different nutrients, and where we've come to over throughout the agricultural revolution is that we've in order to make harvesting the crops faster, we've sprayed on weed killer. The weed killer has killed this ecosystem, and so now we've kind of come up with this poor substitute, which is we'll add back in one or two of the main nutrients, we'll add back in nitrogen, etc. So the farmer's having to buy weed killer to kill his soil, and then he's having to buy fertilizer to put some of it back in. Is that where we are?
Put it back in, yeah. Put back into what should have been there in the first place. Yeah, you've just worked against it. You have a reductionist approach. It's like remove. That's a risk. Remove. There's a bug. There's something alive over there. Kill. it's like kill. That's a risk. It's a perceived risk. But there's now, for example, on the pest side, these things are eating something else, right? It's like the people that don't like the spiders in their house, but the spiders are eating the flies which you don't like in your house, right? It's the same thing. The aphid is there, or that thing is there because it's eating something, because there's something unbalanced in your system. Where if you have aphids, you attract ladybugs. Ladybugs eat aphids. It's because you've killed the ladybugs. Aphids are exploding. And that's the problem. It's you always need a little bit of something. It's an economy in my head. I look at it like if you had our nation, UK, for example, it is very leveraged to the financial sector. It's very financially driven, and hence we've been on a big push to bring in tech, bring in manufacturing. So if one of them goes under, don't worry. As a nation, we can still keep going. But if you're just have one thing, you're very vulnerable. Again, I go back to like stock market and portfolio management. You've got to have a diversified portfolio. If you just hold Tesla, be prepared, or Bitcoin, be prepared for volatility in your thing. And that's what's going on in the food system. It's a monocropping, one thing. If it's not there, it shouldn't be there. Just remove it and control it approach. And that's not how nature works. It's an ecosystem of balance, of system of systems. So we just need to just start working with it. There's no point trying to redesign it. It will always come back fighting against us. Just look at Chernobyl, right? Chernobyl, we wiped it out. We wiped it out of our stupidity of the nuclear power plant, right? But then look at it now. It looks like a paradise of a forest. How did nature do that? Nature starts repairing, decomposes, gets rid of it, and repairs and recycles again. It's a fascinating machine.
So enter stage right, ag tech, technology, the intersect between technology and agriculture. What is that? Is it like this big monolithic thing, or is it several different approaches?
Yeah, it's I think it's similar to what's happened in other industries. The digitization of an industry, has created exciting efficiencies as well as disruption. And I think what's happening in ag tech is firstly, ag tech is the last one, right? I think it's the last sector. It still is a huge opportunity. It's still not digitized. I say digitized. I think there's a lot of misnomers out there. People think, oh, they're already doing it. There's lots of drones running around, right? There's lots of drones. There's lots of data. I can tell you, being in it, it's not true. It's just not true. It's again, go back to what you said, like growers are financially stricken. They don't have any propensity to take risk. So to bring in this startup to kind of start working with, I just need you to come to me when you've created the Google or the Amazon of agriculture, and then I buy it. I don't want to take any risk. And this is stopping the adoption of a lot of technology. So, and we are dealing with something as we just spoke about. It's complex. There's a lot of inputs, so that there's a lot of solutions to solve for. So the ag tech is wide, agriculture is wide, and ag tech is elementally that. It is lots of players now coming in and solving for a lot of the problems that exist in the production of food. And we can go on for hours to talk about what some of those things are. But elementally, step one is digitizing a lot of those inputs, digitizing the feeds, which we're at still at the moment, I would say, is generating quality information on what's happening in that environment, not weather, but the tree, the carbon in the soil, understanding what's going on in the manufacturing process to then start to optimize it. I think there's been a bit of sprinting before you can, as they say, running before you can walk in recent years in ag tech, in my opinion. We talk about AI and automation. Before we can even do that, we need to digitize, don't we, first? So I think, yeah, okay, yeah. What I mean is, like, one of my references here is like picking. Everyone's like, oh, you just automate it. Pick. Let's pick apples. Let's, for example, pick apples off the tree. We can do that quite easily. But before you can even pick it, you've got to be able to see it. What I mean by that, you need to be able to see the apple. If you can see the apple, then you can count the apple. And I can tell you right now, if you can count the apples, I can tell you now, if you can count it with accuracy, you will, as a solution, you will transform the industry. Why? Because this is the problem for many growers. They don't have visibility on what their output is right now. They don't have it until the harvest happens, right? So if that solution is really there, that has value today. Forget being able to move the arm to pick it. Please just give me that algorithm which can count apples, size it to give me my predicted yield. My God, that is worth billions. That is worth billions in terms of value add for the industry.
Okay, so an apple farmer, apples are very relevant for you, aren't they? Because your company started.
Yeah.
Was it incubated by an apple farm?
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. So Barnsley, England, incubated the idea and concept of BX, being frustrated by the lack of ag tech adoption, and two was like frustrated by the kind of the financial strain that they were under in terms of they just didn't see if they could plant trees again in the next 2 or 3 years. So they needed to make a transformational change, get paid for something else, start changing this game. So, and again, from myself, the perspective, I saw that developing ag tech, I was struggling to articulate the value proposition, and product development is really expensive in agriculture because there's a year sales cycle in terms of farmer will buy every year, essentially. And you want to just understand how to make the product better for them. They don't have much time. So wouldn't it be great, actually, we just built this software or technology on farm, and we're right next to the grower on a daily basis, solving, testing, iterating, and they are aligned also to accelerate that process. It's incentives, right, as well. So that was our idea and concept, and I think we're proving that out. Like our development in the last 18 months has been absolutely rapid, and we now have a proposition which is ready to start bringing in other growers, and it's a solution which works for not 1 hectare of growth of a grower. That's what normally happens. You can just do 1% of my farm on your solution, and then I may scale you up. It's like, no, we're doing this on 800 hectares, transform the whole business. And so that's what the other farmer wants to see. You've taken one of the biggest businesses in the UK and elementally transformed it, or started to transform it, should we say. It's, so I want that. And that's good.
So let's move on to BX then. What does BX do?
What does BX do? And then, what is BX? So we're creating a two-sided platform for the grower. What do I mean by that two-sided? One side, we're helping them to, as we're just kind of alluded to there, is give them the intelligence on what's happening on their farm from a real-time basis. So can you see operationally your profitability per field, right? And to do that, you've got to then take all that information and give that kind of insight. At the same time, we're then trying to encourage the farmer to shift the behavior, change to more climate smart ag or regen ag practices, which can improve your profitability, which is a big tick for them, right? Don't spray, we recommend you do this and that. Plant cover crops, don't till the land, and you'll start to see improvements, and you'll start to improve your profitability. And then the other side is then commercializing that positivity. In other words, when they potentially start sequestering carbon in their soils, for example, because they've changed their practice, we've developed what we call the Earth Exchange, which is where growers can tokenize. They've tokenized their positive improvements, and then we're then connecting them with conscious corporates who are investing in growers to make a change. So it's bringing those two worlds together. Or we see this, so many people wanting to get involved in this, corporates to financial institutions who want to invest in, attack the climate change problem. But then you've got lots of growers here who are just like financially stricken and want to change, but they haven't got the backing, and no one's going to pay them for it or support them. They're not getting it in their products because it's been told to be cheaper and cheaper each year. But hey, if I do reduce my sprays, if I do start sequestering carbon because it's the right, we should grow for that way, then can someone back me on that and invest in me on that? And we see a huge opportunity in that, in bringing the two sides together, because it's just connecting the two sides up, and blockchain really enables us to do that and makes it so. Blockchain has now become, as I kind of like referred to, it's like cloud infrastructure. It's, you can go into AWS tomorrow and set up a business quite quickly. Like the barrier to entry to kind of set up a cloud business is very low now. the amount of blockchain technology stacks that are out there now, we found it's incredibly fast to develop a trading platform on there and can create smart contracts. So we're creating smart contracts between conscious corporates who want to back growers to transform sort of regenerative practices and climate smart practices. And then the grower then, can take that risk, right? It is a risk. It feels like a risk because it is a risk because they've got their whole production conditioned to inputs. It's like a drug addict. You're addicted. But if you're just dousing yourself in antibiotics every single day and bleach, you're going to be vulnerable, right? And then coming off that and trying to get yourself back up to being fit and strong, it's going to be a bit of a transition. So there's a bit of fear, but if you can be financially supported to transition, that's what growers want. And that's a win-win because, we then get growers start not only producing food, they start repairing our atmosphere, they start repairing, the biodiversity, improve our air, improving our flood protection because, we can get into it, but our better soils can hold more water, capacity can hold more water. And we're seeing all these floods, etc. A very live soil that's not dust, is alive. It can hold much more water. I think it's for every 1% of organic matter, I may have got my numbers wrong here, in the soil, it can hold an extra 200,000 litres per hectare. 200,000 litres, like for every 1%. So all that rain that's been hitting us recently in the UK, right? And it's been we had floods in London, for goodness sake. Now I've never seen it. I've never seen floods in London, really. That just goes soaked into the soil. It's like a sponge.
That was brought to life really nicely in the documentary, which I believe you've seen as well. Is it The Biggest Little Farm or The Littlest Big Farm?
Yes.
Biggest
I recommend that.
Oh man! Oh, what a beautiful film! I watched it and then I watched it again with my kids. What I loved, I loved many things about that film, but they took this dust bowl. I think it was in California, wasn't it, near LA?
Yes, apricot farms.
Apricot farms, just completely dust everywhere. Yeah. And over a period of, I don't know how many seasons it was, 7 seasons perhaps, they turned it back into this picture book. It was like out of a fairy tale picture of a farm, wasn't it? Where you had your sheep and you had your ducks and you had eagles but what stood out to me from that is that once the soil started to be covered with stuff versus their neighbour's farm, just captures so much more water. When it rained, it washed their neighbour's soils away, but the water stayed in their soil.
No, exactly. We've seen that evidence of that already. For example, biology, we're having to water less, and we know water, especially with climate change. That's going to be. It's almost like we kind of forgot about this. Talk about CO2, with the heating up, the water cycle that is going to happen. We're going to have less and less water available to feed these crops and stuff like that. So if the soil has a lot of water holding capacity, then you won't need to water because there's enough available water in the ground for the roots to suck up on. So we have these sensors on the tree, for example, and we watch the stress of the tree. In other words, it flexes back and forth. When it's needing water, it kind of shrinks down because it's looking for water, and it goes back up in the evening. But when there's not available water, it's really flexing hard. It's really stressed out. But we saw that when we were normally watering, we normally water now, it's 25 C. It wasn't stressed. Because the soils were better. They obviously clearly got a more available water down there. There's more availability of water for the tree. It was fine. But the perception is water, we have to water because it's hot. There was no data-driven decision of that. So it's quite clear.
So that's a measurable improvement in your practice and therefore in the yield. How long has that taken to come about? Is that 10 years? Is it 10 months? Somewhere between?
Oh, to improve the soils, or to improve the. You can have an impact straight away year one. Straight away start improving it. What we in our software platform, we ask growers if they want to sell their positivity, in other words, sell their what we call ecosystem improvement token, which then a corporate will buy to invest in the grower. They adhere to some smart practices. One of those is simply plant more crop, promote biodiversity. So again, I'm referring to apples. You have an apple tree and grass. If you just actually plant another crop in there, then you've induced more biodiversity. I would plant multiple crops. So now growers are planting multiple species in the rows next to the trees, and they're wildflowers to clovers to fennels to herbs. And that's bringing back more life, more pollination, right? Naturally, more habitat. And then you're also growing more organic matter, which then dies down and goes into the soil as well. So that's a climate smart practice. Plant more diverse species of life in that area. Then you add more resilience. So if a pest does come, guess what? The ladybugs are there. They're going to eat it. All of these extra things. You don't have to apply the pesticide because it's handled by the ecosystem. So that's one way of one we kind of encourage that kind of better practice. And the other ways is increasing more, reducing your inputs, and then the other ways what we encourage is adding more organic matter, in other words, to the soil.
So we spoke about, when we were talking about the problem space earlier, we said that modern agricultural practices have led to the soil being a lot lower quality, and therefore the nutrients in the soil are a lot lower. We said that it's emitting. We've taken all of this soil out of the carbon and thrown it into the atmosphere, global warming. And then the third thing is it's quite expensive for the farmer, who has to buy both weed killer and the thing to replace what the weed killer killed. It sounds like what AgTech is attempting to do is to solve all of those three problems at once.
Yeah, you could argue it is that. I suppose we are positioning ourselves as more as a climate tech play. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because in the end, that's our incentive. I think ag tech is certainly more focused. I personally felt it's been more focused on operational efficiency and reducing the risks for grower. But if you put it in a climate tech wrapper, what I mean by that, what are you optimizing for? We're optimizing for improving the environment. We're optimizing for repairing the planet. That's what we're optimizing for, and so. And that's been the problem, right? That's the problem for farmers. They've been optimizing for the wrong thing. They were optimizing for cheaper food. And so if we can get them to optimize for repairing the planet, then the byproduct of repairing the planet is better food and more food. So, if there's kind of a better way of probably articulating what we're trying to achieve is change the optimization. So we're actually designing a turnkey solution right now, taking a bit like what the vertical farming and everything is doing is, can we take a piece of land and redesign how you do the orchard, how many trees you have in it, where you're not thinking about producing as much fruit as possible. You're thinking about, how do I maximize carbon sequestration, utilizing apple trees and other crops in here to maximize sequestration, and then obviously you utilize the byproduct of that optimization is food. So it's just your KPI is carbon in the soil. You're not worried about bringing a crop off it, and guess what? You actually do end up optimizing for. You actually do end up increasing yield. What I mean by that is we're planting more trees. We're putting more cover crops in, and you're going to get more fruit coming off it, and more nutritious fruit coming off it as well. But it's just changing the KPI that drives the financial decision to invest in that and make that decision. We're basically putting tunnels, for example, over the top of apple trees, like putting cover over them to reduce the risks of all these extra issues like the climate change. And it normally thinks, that's expensive. Not if you actually work out the revenue you can earn from carbon, the revenue that you would then earn from improved product. And you're not having to spray, you're not having to run the tractor through there multiple times. You actually only need to do it through once. When you model out the numbers, and we're hopefully going to prove this out from a turnkey solution perspective, it's more about showing actually, let's just not continuing to build it under the legacy of old knowledge. It's just, if we actually change our optimization metric, the thing can become, you can build a sustainable agricultural system.
Amazing. It sounds like we've been saying. I was just watching a video earlier of Isaac Asimov in 1988 saying, "Yeah, climate change is really big this year. Everyone's talking about climate change. I've been talking about it for 20 years. So people have a long time. Like, chat, why don't we solve climate change?" But it sounds like what you've managed to do is to say, well, one thing that would really help is if we changed our agricultural practices. That's what we want to solve climate change. One thing that would help is to change our agricultural practices, we know that you, farmers, these are some things that you need. We're going to help you to solve those problems. And we're going to get this thing that this other group of people need, right? So these people over here need to offset their carbon. We're going to get them to pay for it. So what they want and what you want, we're going to bring them together to magically create what we want, which is, we've just solved 19% of climate change. Is that an oversimplification? Gross oversimplification.
No, that's exactly.
That's it.
No, exactly. Exactly. Like there's those that can create impact and positive impact. They just haven't got an incentive to do it. There's no financial incentive to do it. And there are those who want to create damage, but but then we just don't reward. We don't tax negative externalities of what we do as human beings. We subsidize them, if anything. We effectively are subsidizing, fossil fuel consumption. That's what we've been doing for years. So we're now built a whole economies on fossil fuel consumption. We didn't think about the negatives that it will generate, and now those negatives are. I think there's a stat which I like is for every. I think natural capital generates natural ecosystem services, be it pollination, carbon sequestration, oxygen, climate regulation, which are nature provides us, generates in terms of economic value is 2 times of what our GDP is globally. It's 2 times. But what is happening is for every additional 1 billion of GDP, we're destroying 2 billion worth of ecosystem services each year. So it's unsustainable. So if you won't be able to produce that GDP very, very soon because you won't be able to sustain it. Like it'll be burnt down, it'll be destroyed because this ecosystem services is not working well. I mean, we're seeing that now, right, on a daily basis. So we're just not quantifying that. So yeah, you're right, exactly as you describe it. So that's all I'm trying to do is incentivize those who can create and repair. We still need to consume. Like we're not going to change, right? We can't stop humans from consuming. That's not going to happen. So how about could we just continue to consume in a way that repairs and regenerates at the same time? And I don't think there's a better industry that can do that other than agriculture. We can produce food that is helping to repair the planet. It's not maintains its status quo at net zero. Every apple you eat is helping to reverse climate change. That's what I want. Not apple, but every pear, every cherry, every perennial, every tea, every blueberry. Certainly perennial crops can do that, I believe. Personally, can lead the way. And then we can move on to the annuals, other foods. But food should be a solution to climate change, not a cause of climate change. It just baffles me. It just absolutely baffles me.
That would be amazing. So the more we eat, the better it becomes.
But this is it, right? We all love to go out and have a good time. Especially in coronavirus, we all love going out and meeting up. And look at the explosion we've seen of food eateries in the last few years, and sadly a lot of them have been hit hard. But we all feel good because it gives us that nice hormone feeling. But how about you give double whammy? Every time you're eating this great food, it's actually a triple whammy. You're actually giving yourself more health, making yourself more healthy, and you're also repairing the planet at the same time. Like that's how it should work. And it can work. It's not mythical. It's It's how the system is designed. We just don't work with it.
Now the technology's helped us, and 200 years of learning have helped us to understand how the system works. We're now better placed to work along with it in a way that it is more symbiotic. That we're both getting the best out of the arrangement, the earth and humanity. Have you got in your mind because I'm optimistic now. When I first started this weed a couple of years ago, I was pretty pessimistic about the future and our chance of pulling off mitigating climate change. Now meeting great people like you has started to turn me into a cautious optimist, and I think we stand every chance of over the next 10 years, halving our emissions and getting to net zero by 2050. I don't know whether you've got in your mind a view of what the world might look like by then. If we manage to pull off all of this change in all of the areas where we need to change, agriculture, how we build things, how we generate electricity, how we move around. Have you got any idea what that future might look like?
I'm caught in 2 minds here, Pete, because one, I obviously want to create a sense of urgency and get action. I don't want people believing we've got this sorted out. No, I go back to my financial markets thinking. It was the black swans that took you down, right? In other words, like you didn't know that was coming. We didn't know coronavirus was coming. we didn't know financial crisis was really coming. But everyone knows this is not everyone knows, but everyone is aware of this problem. There's a book called Factfulness. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. So there's a survey at the start, asks you 13 questions about the world and the status of it, and generally people get about two questions out of 13 right about the state of the world. The one generally gets answered correctly most of the time is climate change question: is climate change occurring, happening or not? Kind of thing. And everyone answers that one in majority correctly. So I think people are aware. So I am with you. I am optimistic because we know when humans get there, when the humans do get into something, they over optimize for it, almost like they sort it out. So I am positive. I'm excited by what's happening now. I'm excited by people's energy towards this and getting into this space. I'm excited by you, Pete, and what you're doing and encouraging that as well. So yeah, I am really excited and positive about it. But the government seems to be getting behind it. Consumers are behind it now. Seems to be corporates are about it. So I think we'll over optimize. We may overcool the planet. There'll be a negative consequence. We will do something. Well, I don't know, but we'll always do. We'll always overcorrect. But I would have been worried if we still were having to convince people that this is an issue. But I am very excited about the solutions that are coming through. But, again, taking myself back to the financial markets, there's been a third of the world's assets now are under ESG mandate, environmental social governance, where they have to be allocated into these plays, into these opportunities. So there's a significant capital now pushing, towards making corporates and us as consumers, and that is being driven by the consumer, right? Because the consumer puts their money into the pension funds and whatever it may be. So it's happening. And we just need to now just open the floodgates and massively. There's going to be an over allocation of capital to an industry. Let's over allocate to climate tech. No problem. No problem there. Every single one is trying to do something along it. Really, really good. That's great news. I'm not going to sit here and bitch about the other tech space and where maybe. Okay, I will do. No, what I will do. Let's stop moving adverts around the screen and optimizing my time to look at an Instagram post. Stop getting me addicted to that. Let's get addicted to climate, right? Let's get addicted to repairing the planet. That's what I want to do. Let's get people addicted to climate-friendly apples. If I get told off and put in in Board of Government, why have you got everyone addicted to eating these climate change apples? I can't stop people eating these apples. Brilliant. We solved them. You can't put me in jail for that.
Yeah. Almost anything else seems like, well, a lot of other things feel like fiddling while Rome burns. That the space tourism. We do with space tourism now. It's like it seems so tone deaf. And I'm a big fan of space travel. Space travel, being able to monitor the Earth from space is hugely useful. Being able to do experiments in space, very useful. Building jet skis that go into space right now for millionaires. Yeah, so I'm with you. Let's get addicted to climate change.
To wrap up then, Anthony, thanks for that. Two questions for our listeners. If people want to hear more about you, where should they go? And the second thing is there anything that you'd recommend that people read if they want to learn more about this space?
Go to our website, bx-earth.com. That's where you can see some of the growers that are on our platform. This is there, and just reach out in terms of you're someone who wants to get involved and support us as well. I've got ideas on how to do better. What our view is, it's a continuous improvement of methodology of what we want to take. So we're scientists to corporates, who have better ways of doing this better and faster. We're up for that. We don't sit here and say we've solved it. We haven't. So, but we're hopefully going to create a movement on both sides. And then, in terms of something I'd recommend to watch or to read or listen to, obviously I'm going to say something about climate smart agriculture and regenerative agriculture. I think just go Netflix and watch Kiss the Ground. It's the best piece of content, which I think it should appeal to the old everyone in any generation. It's a beautiful piece of content which explains to you about what we've done to the food system, and what some exciting stories of farmers doing something different and trying to regenerate the land and become sustainable. So definitely, when we were designing and coming up with BX, when it came out, we're like, oh my god, it's Netflix, a great piece of content for us to refer to. So give that a watch. Spend an hour and a half, as well as you want to watch something even more beautiful, as you said, Pete. The Biggest Little Farm, in terms of, that's a beautiful film, and it's a true story. 7 years in the making, and they recorded it all, of how they transformed a dead farm and busted farm into now a flourishing, balanced ecosystem with working with animals as well. That's integrating animals as well. That's very, very, very good piece of content. That's what I recommend. I'm not going to recommend a book, because I think these days people don't have much time.
Great. All right. Well, that's great. Thanks a lot. Listen, it's been so nice talking to you today. Thanks a lot for spending this time with us, and we're really looking forward to seeing the magic that BX creates in the world.
No, I appreciate it, Pete, and I always enjoy our conversations. I enjoy going deeper on it and being a bit more, getting into the weeds of it, shall we say? Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming, Anthony.
Cheers. Bye-bye.